My pleasure to welcome you to the organizational and regular Board of Education meeting for Caledonia Community Schools on this January 27th, 2025. And if you all would please rise to say the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can we have roll call?
Barbara Garcia.
Here.
Brandau.
Here.
Collins.
Here.
Esich here. Cone.
Here.
Morris.
Here.
Nichols.
Here.
Great, thank you. It's good to see everyone, welcome. We are going to start with our fourth agenda item here, which is our election of officers for 2025. And after we elect our new president, then we will have that person take us through the rest of the meeting. So with that said, we will open a call for nominations for president.
I'd like to nominate Tim Morris for president.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Tim?
Thank you, I humbly accept that. Thank you.
Okay. Katie, roll call?
Barbara Garcia.
Yes.
Brandau.
Yes.
Collins.
Yes.
Esich. No. Cone.
Yes.
Morris.
Yes.
Nichols.
Yes.
All right, so that motion carries and we now have a new president. Congratulations, Tim.
Thank you.
Absolutely, and I will now turn it over to you for the rest of our officer elections.
Thank you, Trustee Brittany. Next order of business is 4B, Vice President. Are there nominations for Vice President?
I'd like to nominate John Brando for Vice President of the Board of Education.
I'll second that. All those in favor of John Brando? Call the roll, Katie.
Barbara Garcia.
Yes.
Brandau.
Yes.
Collins.
Yes.
Esich. Yes. Cone.
Yes.
Morris.
Yes.
Nichols.
Yes.
Congratulations, Mr. Brando. On to item 4C, which is the nomination for secretary. Are there nominations for secretary?
I nominate Casey Isaac as the secretary. Isaac? You're fine. Okay, sorry.
Second.
Okay, Madam Secretary, you can call the roll call.
Barbara Garcia.
Yes.
Brandau.
Yes.
Collins.
Yes.
Esich. Yes. Cone.
Yes.
Morris.
Yes.
Nichols.
Yes.
Congratulations. On to item 4D, the Office of Treasurer. I nominate Brittany Barber Garcia for treasurer.
I'd second that.
Thank you, Mr. Brando.
Happy to accept. Thank you very much.
And we may call the roll.
Barbara Garcia.
Yes.
Brandau.
Yes.
Collins.
Yes.
Esich. Yes. Cone.
Yes.
Morris.
Yes.
Nichols.
Yes.
Great. Congratulations, officers, and thank you for your support with this position. We're gonna move on to item 5, recognition. Mr. Superintendent?
Yeah, so on your table there, you have just a small token of appreciation. I know that for two of you, this is brand new, and so we appreciate you being willing to step forward and serve the community and our children in this capacity. And for the rest of you, thank you for all you've done over the last, 2 or 4 or more years. Tim, I've lost track of how many that is, but
Me too.
we appreciate all the time and effort you put in. And it sometimes can be a thankless job, we know, and people, you receive all sorts of constructive criticism, but just appreciate all that you do. So just a small token of our appreciation for you.
Thank you. I do want to pause for a minute here and reach out to those who have public comment tonight. There's cards out there and about, and if there are any, can they be collected here before? With Kelly over here, back here, she can collect those. Item number 6, student representative. Do we have a student
We were
representative?
notified that the student representative wasn't able to be here.
Okay. And we'll move on to item 7, public comment. Is there any public comment tonight? Seeing none, we'll move to item 8, consent agenda. Includes December 16's regular board meeting minutes, December 16's closed session minutes, December 24th payables, January 2025 personnel report, anticipated overnight trips for 2025, legal firms that may be retained as needed, Clark Hill
I didn't
PLC.
get that. Could you try again?
Trying to silence us.
I won't let
Miller Johnson Snell Comiskey, sorry. True Law authorized the superintendent, assistant superintendent, and chief financial officer or their designees to sign checks, contracts, agreements, and purchase orders. And item H, authorize the chief financial officer or their designee as the district's electronic transfer officer. And I, authorize the superintendent designee to assume specific responsibilities of the board secretary.
I move that the board approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second? Any discussion? Okay. We'll call the roll.
Beverly Garcia,
Yes.
Randall,
Yes.
Collins,
Yes.
Isich, yes, Cone,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Nichols.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. On to item 9, superintendent report.
All right, there will be a few items here tonight. First of all, I want to start with the construction update, and so we'll begin with the activity at the pool. It's making great progress. We have water in the pool. All of our pumps are running. We have had some of the final inspections, and so we are going to meet tomorrow and hopefully be able to determine a opening date for when we're gonna be able to open to the public. We have a few punch list items to still work through and a couple of remaining inspections, but all things are looking great, and we're getting very, very excited about that. So watch for updates coming out in the very near future on when that opening date will be. We're intending to have a ribbon cutting and have an open house opportunities for the public before the facility goes into full operation under the Y and our Caledonia Resource Center. Mr. Hess would like to make a comment.
Just wanted to add to about the pool before we got too far off. We received our Eagle pool licensure late this afternoon. So Eagle of the state of Michigan has put their stamp of approval on the pool. So that's a huge step,
Yes, sir.
another great step forward.
Exactly. So we're very excited, and it's almost here, and it will be also a relief, I have to say. New Dutton continues really making great progress, and so for the board, I think it would be wonderful if we get you back into the New Dutton facility just so that you can take a tour and see the latest work in there for 2 board members to get your first opportunity to get in there. And so we are working with Chrisman, and based on what our decisions are tonight on like committee meetings and this sort of thing, we will look for a date when that might work to pair up with a future board meeting and have you be able to tour that. So great work happening there at New Dutton. And then, of course, the stadium too, being outdoors, they are working here through the winter, and so it's making good progress. We've got a lot of footings in, walls should start to rise here in the very near future. Had another good meeting with the township today regarding some water main things that we're going to need to work on there, and so that continues to move forward well. And then we are now turning our attention to the next projects on the horizon authorized by the voters, and that's our fields at Calplex and work at Duncan Lake Middle School. And we've been working on those already, and we're continuing to try and push that forward so that we can get to some bidding here in a few months' time. So great progress and very exciting things to see in construction. In other items then, a couple of other things that I just wanted to pass along to you. First of all, Mr. Hess handed us this thing a short time ago, and that is that Consumers Energy has given us an energy rebate check for this past year of nearly $42,000, $41,967. So thank you, Mr. Hess, for your work in filing all that stuff and getting that approved and getting 42 grand back in the coffers. So thank you for that. Had an opportunity for a couple of wonderful activities here this weekend. On Friday afternoon, our choral airs were a featured group at the statewide Michigan Music Conference. There were only 4 groups selected to participate in the choral hour at that event. And so congratulations to Ms. Stevens and the choral airs. They had a wonderful performance. I was privileged to be able to be down there and to see them in action. So that was wonderful, as was the performance by our Caledonia Youth Theater of Beauty and the Beast Jr. So don't know if any of you were able to go, but that was also terrific, and just really thank all the staff who worked so hard to pull that off. I think the number was 138 2nd through 6th graders were in the cast. So if you can imagine the logistical work to make that happen, it's remarkable. And then the other thing that I wanted to give you an update on and give you an overview of is we will be talking in a little bit about the non-homestead millage renewal. And so I wanted to provide you with a little bit of background information and for the public's benefit here tonight too, so that we just wanted to go through a few things for you here. So, let's me all up. Okay. So we are coming up upon the time where our non-homestead millage needs to be renewed, and I need to turn on the clicker like Christy told me to do, and I forgot. So in order to do that, I just want to give you a little bit of background on this. So in the Caledonia Schools budget, we have a number of actual sub-funds under that. It's not just one budget, but many. And the primary one we're going to talk about here is general fund. We're not going to dive into any of the others, but you know when we come around to budget approval time, we actually do talk about all these different funds. So within the general fund, a big part of that general fund comes from our foundation allowance. The foundation allowance is an amount that we receive on a per pupil basis, and that's something that the state of Michigan says this is your amount that you're going to get in every school district across the state of Michigan. It's kind of their guaranteed number from the state of Michigan. And for the current year that we are in, 24-25, and actually it was also the number for last year, that number is $96.08 per pupil, $9,608 per student. So for us in Caledonia, when you multiply that out, you've got our number of students, which we have full-time equivalent students, just over 5,000 students, times that 9608, we are over $48 million of our revenue comes in through the foundation allowance, and that amounts to approximately 68% of all of our general fund revenues. That includes federal government stuff, other locals. I mean, it's a big number, 68%. Okay, so when we look at the foundation allowance, this is impacted by our non-homestead millage. The foundation allowance, we get money from a blend of both state money coming from the state of Michigan, and our local money. Okay, that local money is calculated on a district by district basis to get to that 9608, and it's done by looking at the non-homestead property in the district. So when they do this, they look at the taxable value of all the property in the district, homesteads and non-homestead. So non-homestead includes, of course, business property and second homes. And so they will look at that total taxable value, and then from there, they will determine how much non-homestead taxable value we have, and that will serve as the local portion of what counts toward our foundation allowance. So of that $48 million that we're getting, a chunk of it is generated here locally on non-homestead property. Okay? Then what the state says is the state portion, they will backfill to get to the total. Okay, and I'll show you a couple examples here right now. So this is our most recent state aid report for this past month. We get revenue from the state each month. We get actually only 11 of the 12 months, but so on this state aid report, you can see right here in the red box, this is what we're guaranteed per student. Our foundation is $96.08 per year. Then down here in this lower red box is where they figure out how much local revenue is going to be. And if you look at the total there, assumed local revenue, it's over $16 million. So out of our $48 million in foundation allowance, over $16 million of that is generated locally on our non-homestead property and on another piece. So you see the two lines above. So our it says non-pre-TV, that's the non-homestead taxable value, okay? And you can see the amount of that taxable value within the Caledonia district is $869 million. Then times the 18 mills is the amount of revenue that's expected to be generated from that, okay? The second line is a different kind of stuff called personal property. That's like machinery within factories and stuff. There's a separate taxation on that. You can see that's at 6 mills. That's not what we're talking about here tonight. We're talking about the first line, the 18 mills, okay? So that's the amount that we're talking about here when we talk about non-homestead property tax. Here up in the upper right that's that number of our students on a full-time equivalent basis, and then down at the bottom, that last red box on the left at the bottom, this is when they figure all that out and they divide that out of that 9608, the amount that's coming locally, they are assuming we will be collecting 3236.62. Okay, now, how does that rank? How does that compare with any other districts? I wanted to show you this as just a little bit of a comparison, okay? So the blue bar, part of the bar, everybody you see here goes out to 9608, right? The blue plus the pink goes out to 9608. The blue portion, that is the part that's being generated locally. So we often think of East Grand Rapids, I think it's thought of in a certain way, but you can see that East Grand Rapids actually locally generates very little non-homestead value, right? Because most of their value is homesteads, okay? They have very little of the non-homestead property. And you can see how that progresses on down the line. This is not all of Kent ISD, and I also threw in Wayland as a neighbor of ours, just so you could see for comparison how those things lay out. And then you see where we are down toward the bottom. In all of Kent ISD, there are only 2 districts that generate more locally than us. It's Grand Rapids, and then the one that generates the most, I didn't have on this because they aren't a direct neighbor of ours, is Kennewa Hills, and they are slightly over $5,000 per student. But you can see, non-homestead property is very, very valuable to Caledonia. And of course, where is most of that located? It's in general up near and north of M6, right, is where a lot of that non-homestead property value is situated for us. Okay, so that's kind of how that plays out. And so there you can see it's roughly 2/3, 1/3 for us. 1/3 local, 2/3 state backfill to get to the 9608. So state law requires that districts levy 18 mills on their local non-homestead property. When this was all set up, it was set up under Proposal A back in 1994. They didn't want districts to kind of shirk this non-homestead part so that they would backfill the entire portion of the 9608. They wanted to make sure that all districts tax themselves on this non-homestead property. So this was the arrangement they made, that you must levy 18 mills or you will forfeit a portion of your foundation allowance. And also, the 18 mills is the maximum that can be levied locally, okay? So we forfeit the corresponding amount if we don't levy all 18 mills, and that can happen really in one of two ways. Either a non-homestead operating millage question fails, and in that case, you have none, you have zero, and so in our case, as you saw, we would lose a third of our foundation allowance, okay? Or it can also fall under 18 mills because of Headley reductions. And so I just wanted to run through that real quickly because some people, we've been dealing with Headley for a long time now in the state of Michigan, but it still can be somewhat difficult to understand. So the Headley Amendment, dating back to 1978, really is saying that if a governmental entity's property values as a whole rise at a rate that's greater than inflation, there must be a reduction on their tax collections called a Headley rollback. So this means that yes, local individual properties can go up by that amount and you don't see an increase in your taxable value beyond inflation. But it also means that as new properties are built within the district, right, and new subdivisions are built or new factories are built, the district's total property values can also not rise at higher than the rate of inflation. So, in other words, that's our limit, is the rate of inflation. And if they rise at greater than that rate, if you're at 18 mills, you have to move that rate down so that the net product at the end of that math problem remains at that rate of inflation, right? So if we go up higher than the rate of inflation, you gotta bring the mills down so that it stays at the rate of inflation. Make sense? It's a little mathy. Okay, so I'm getting glazed over looks. No, I'm just gonna keep moving forward. So therefore, if we have that happen to us, it ends up we end up having to forfeit some of our revenue in our foundation allowance. So that has impacted Caledonia in the relatively recent past. So here, as you see on this slide, in 2018-19, that situation happened to us. Our overall property values increased by greater than the rate of inflation, and so our mills, our 18 mills, were reduced by 0.1548. That lost about $71,300 in revenue there in 2018-19. The following year, it happened again, and in fact, we're reduced by a higher number. And then that was added to the previous reduction from the previous year. So it reduced that year alone by 0.2053. Total then was 0.3609 that we lost. That caused a loss of $186,200 in revenue. That's real money, right? So that led the school district and the school board to go and ask the voters to approve an extra amount. So not only to renew the non-homestead property tax, they were right at the situation we are now. The previous authorization was at the end of its 5 years, so they had to go back and ask for 5 years additional. Plus, they asked for an additional 1.8 mills to serve as a cushion to put above that renewal to help guard against future Headley reductions. And we'll show you how that works, okay, in just a second. There has been a millage reduction for Caledonia schools in 6 out of the last 7 years because of our growth, okay? So here's what that has looked like. So going back, I did the past 10 years. Going back to 2015, 16, 17, 17, 18, we were able to levy at that 18 mills because that's what we were authorized, and there was no Headley rollback, okay? At that point, our district property values were not increasing faster than the rate of inflation. But then in 18, 19, you can see that's where we had that first thing kick in, and we lost that $71,300 of revenue, and then the next year it was drawn down further, $186,200. Okay, then when that millage was passed, you can see the net result. There are two things to look at. First of all, do you see the purple bar remained the same? Okay, it did not go down. That year, we actually would have reduced, but because we went to the voters and asked for the renewal, it was renewed at the same amount. So that kind of overrode that reduction for that year because the voters said, no, you can renew it at that same level. Notice though, it didn't get pushed back up to 18. It was at that same level because it was called a renewal. okay? And then on top, you see the yellow plus the kind of greeny yellow parts. That together represents the 1.8 mils of additional cushion that was there. So that put us up, again, over the 18 mils. Now remember, the state says all you can ever levy is 18 mils. That's the red line going across, okay? So even though voters gave us more authorization, that's all we could levy. And that's all we can ever levy is 18, okay? The next year in 2021-22, you can see we chewed that down because again, there was another Headley rollback. And the same thing for the next year in 2022-23, another Headley rollback, okay? If you look at 23-24, however, do you notice the purple stayed the same? You see that? The purple from 22-23 to 23-24 stayed the same. And if you think about that time period coming out of COVID, we had super high inflation, right? So for that year, we did not have a Headley reduction because inflation was so high. Our property values were still going up, but they weren't going up at a rate faster than inflation, okay? So that year stayed flat. And then this current year, we have had, again, a small reduction. Not at the same level as some of the others, because again, I would say it's probably because inflation was still somewhat high, okay? But it continues, of course, to kind of go back to pre-COVID levels. So as we come into considering action tonight, the thing we need to try and do is to project what the future is gonna look like, right? And what the Headley impact will be. So I ran a few numbers for you and I wanted to share those with you. The inflation that we've seen following the pandemic, this has made this a bit difficult because especially the last 2 years are not what I would call typical from an inflationary standpoint where we've been for much of the last, quarter century probably. But at the same time, we know that our property values in Caledonia and the Grand Rapids metro area are continuing to increase even while inflation is slowing. And on top of that, we see all the new development happening here in Caledonia. So I think it's almost a guarantee that we will see a Headley rollback again this year and really for each of the years in the foreseeable future. So we have to, I think, kind of take that into account. So what number do we use? So from a projection standpoint, the numbers I ran kind of throughout the last 2 years of this inflationary cycle and looked at the 5 prior to that. So for 18, 19 up through 22, 23. And the way this is done, they calculate a millage reduction fraction. That's what they multiply by your number of mills to get you to where you need to be. So to calculate this, we used an average there of those 5 years or 0.9865, and that gave us this chart. So a couple things about this chart. The first thing I want to point out is that do you see how we're looking at 2024, 25 is our current year, and then what it would be next year in 25, 26, okay? Notice that the purple remains the same because just like happened 5 years ago, if the voters approve the non-homestead millage, it will be a renewal at the exact same rate. So that purple bar carries across. And then for the next 4 years beyond that, I applied that sort of average reduction that you saw there. And you can see that it whittles everything away. So we are in a little bit of a question. And in fact, I worry about particularly these last 2 years. If we see larger Headley reductions than we have seen, and I think it's quite possible given the increasing property values that we've had, we could well be in these last 2 years back into a situation where we are losing revenue due to these Headley rollbacks, okay? So I wanted to give that to you. It's, I think, it's a very fair projection. I think it could be worse or it could be better, but we don't really know. So trying to kind of shoot through there. So as I said, we may run out of cushion before the end of the next 5 year, and they're just projections, so they may be inaccurate, get both to the good and the bad. So just as a couple of reminders then, we have to levy the 18. If we don't, we forfeit the difference. And also, just another reminder that all homestead property, that gets taxed at the state education tax, that's 6 mills, that does not have anything to do with this. That is money that goes from the taxpayers to the state of Michigan, and the state uses that to help out with their education budget obligations, okay? So We can ask for a range of years. We've typically done 5 years, and part of why that's done is because we bear the cost of this election. And that election, we don't have the exact amount yet, but the estimate is it probably would run around $30,000 to conduct that election. So we don't want to be going out every year to do it. And so what we have suggested is we have 2 real avenues for that we prepare for you to consider. We can go in different directions than this too, but these are the 2 that we've considered based on our past history. And that is, when we get to this item on the action items, we have proposed 5-year renewal for you to take, to authorize to take to the voters. And there are 2 options for you to consider. Option 1 is renewing it at the current heavily reduced amount. So in other words, that would not add any cushion back and would not reset us to the 18. As you saw in that chart I was showing you with those assumptions, we might get to the end of the 5 years or we might not. Option 2 is that we can renew plus ask for an increase to the cushion. And this is allowed for us to ask on the same question. In other words, it doesn't have to be 2 questions on the ballot. It's 1 question where we can ask for up to 5.5 mils of increase when renewing on the same ballot question. And so that wording was in the materials that were sent to you. That is going to be our recommendation to you as the board, that we do that. We think that that will enable us to get through the 5 years. I think it will be pretty close, but that will enable us to get through the 5 years without seeing a loss in revenue. I think it's a possibility, and I would say I'm worried about a loss of revenue if we go with option 1, okay? So there's that chart again, and that's where you can see now if you add a $0.5 mil on those bars, it would get us hopefully through that period until the next 5-year renewal would come up in early 2030. Okay? All right, there's the reminders and disclaimers. Homestead properties unaffected. This is only for non-homestead, and the max we can ever authorize is 18, or we can ever levy is 18. Okay, any questions on any of that? So I know, again, this is a thing we're having to kind of do without as much discussion as we would have liked had we had committee meetings this month, but that's why I wanted to spend a little more time to kind of go through this and make sure everybody's on the same page.
Thank you, Dirk. I'm glad you did. There's a lot of information, especially for new board members and even seasoned board members. It's a good refresher to know what this all involves in operating the district's budget. Moving on, item 10, discussion item, board consideration 2025 regular board meeting schedule.
Yeah, so this also will be considered tonight, and we laid out some dates for you on a tentative board meeting schedule. Of course, any of these can be altered, but the basic idea behind it was to pattern just like we have done in the past. At least a couple of years is my understanding. For me, it's only 1 year, but so in other words, next month we would also not be on the 3rd Monday because of midwinter break being on that 3rd Monday. So that would put the February date as February 24th. Then we would have a long string of them where we would have be on the 3rd Monday. But then in July, we have typically also pushed that one back. And so that one is on this calendar as July 28th or the 4th Monday again. And the reasoning behind that is because we are coming into the start of school, and the 3rd Monday in August is when we're actually in session. And so we have personnel related things that sometimes need to be taken care of, and we have a better idea there on July 28th than we might on July 21st. And it just gets us that much closer to that August start of school, and we are required to have a meeting a month on our schedule. So that's that, and then the rest of the year would again be at the 3rd Monday. So just based on past, that's what we prepared for you to consider tonight.
Great, thank you. Moving on to number 11, action items. A, authorize financial institutions.
I move that the board authorize the use of United Bank, Fifth Third Bank, and Michigan Liquid Asset Fund Plus.
Is there a second?
Second. Second.
And discussion?
Sorry. I'm gonna recuse myself from voting on the authorization of the financial institutions for 2025 due to my employment with Fifth Third Bank. Although the contracts predate my board election and there is no conflict of interest in the policy that I read, I want to avoid any appearance of any impropriety at this point.
You certainly have every right to do that. Thank you for bringing that up tonight. Any other questions, comments? Okay, please call the roll.
Brandow,
Yes.
Berber Garcia,
Yes.
Collins,
Yes.
Isich, yes, Morris,
Yes,
Nichols.
Yes.
motion passes. On to 11B, 2025 board meeting schedule.
I move that the board adopt the 2025 regular schedule as proposed.
Second.
Any discussion? Dates work okay for everyone? Better than most? Okay, call the vote, please.
Berber Garcia,
Yes.
Collins,
Yes.
Brandow,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Cone,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes,
Isich.
Yes.
motion passes. On to item 11C, resolution calling non-homestead millage renewal election, May 2025. In this motion, we do have to make the motion with option 1 or option 2. Is there a motion?
I move that the board adopt the option 2 resolution calling for a special election on May 6, 2025.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Any more discussion, I should say? Okay, seeing none, we'll call the vote, please.
Isich, yes, Berber Garcia,
Yes.
Brandow,
Yes.
Collins,
Yes.
Cone,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Morris.
Yes. Motion passes, option 2. On to number 12, discussion items, board considerations. Item A, school bus purchase. Mr. Hess.
Good evening. Before we jump into a couple of first reads this evening, I just want to share that as Board Appreciation Month is here, the staff and obviously the leadership of operations and transportation do appreciate everything that you guys do for us and you do for the district, and I wish to thank you as well. So a couple of
And I wanna say the same thing, I'm sorry, I have my hat on, but I've had it on all day, so I have hat hair, so I but I was not able to make it here last month to for the last two board members to leave, but I wanna welcome you guys here, and I'm grateful to be here and look forward to having a conversation about our school buses.
And my welcome comes with a couple new hard hats for you, so it's exciting, So this evening, we have first reading of the proposal for the purchase of school buses and vans, school transportation vehicles. This is kind of an interesting one, as it spans multiple budget sources. So we try to break it down as easy as possible. We are recommending the purchase of 4 school buses. In that 4, that is 3 that are full 77 passenger school buses and 1 47 passenger special needs vehicle with a lift as a wheelchair bus. And 2 vans currently in this proposal. The vans that we use are used for a lot of small trips, small use items. They are 8 to 10 passenger vans. We transport the golf team, occasionally the bowling team, occasionally a smaller ski group. We also transport some of our students to some of the non-local programs, KCTC, up at the ISD and other things of that nature. So they serve a variety of purposes. They are predominantly used for athletic though. I would say the vast majority of their use goes to athletic use. We do currently have 5 vans in our fleet. There were a couple questions that came up on the way to this, and I've answered one by attaching a full spreadsheet of our current bus fleet. You'll see that as an attachment now to the document. And it also identifies the 3 buses that we would like to be moved off the fleet and into auction, that's how we dispose of buses. This year, a good news that auction buses are going for a higher price, so we're getting more return value. Unfortunately, a $124,000 investment in a new school bus gets us $3,000 at the other end when they go out of the fleet, so $3,000 to $4,000 right now. So, but actually that is more than usual, more than we have been getting. So the inventory is there. So the question was asked about the use of the word spare in the report. We use the word spare because that's a state word, and they use that in their reporting of school buses. Think of this as a substitute teacher. We have a bus that's in for repairs. We need to have a number of buses in the fleet that are able to back them up, able to get out on the road at either a moment's notice or planned, and be ready to go to serve to back up the regular fleet. The state has a general rule of thumb that says 1 for 10. We tend in Caledonia to run a little higher than that, mostly just because of our rural environment. We don't have a lot of dirt roads, but that certainly does contribute to some of our challenges here. So we have traditionally run a little bit higher in our spare count, appropriately so. And we do have 9 smaller buses. I say smaller, they range anywhere from 24 to 47 passengers, 54 passengers for special needs use. We do a lot of miles of special needs transportation in Caledonia. We're really proud of the abilities and the fleet that we've generated to transport a great number of special needs students safely. And again, we do have 5 vans. 3 of those vans are currently, one is a 2010, 2 of them are 2011s. I'll be adding that to the future report here. And all 3 of those are, while not as high mileage as one of our newer ones, they are all showing their age. I think we can think of a 2010 van, 14 years old on the road. It's starting to look its age. It's starting to have definite rust problems, definite suspension problems. And we'd like to keep those kids safe for those longer road trips that we take with those vans out of the district. Beyond that, I think that pretty much sums it up. We're looking, like I said, some of these are gonna come from current budget, the vans, because they're available, they're in stock. Usually a 45-day delivery date is out there. And then we are looking at the school buses for delivery in the 25-26 school year. We have a bond line item for school buses. However, we've discussed, as in the past, we've done this, we've purchased them from general fund to keep that bond money safe and looking forward into other areas and against the future possibility of needing more buses for that. A third question was raised regarding the insurance costs on buses. We do have a pretty substantial blanket policy, obviously covering the fleet of 54 plus the vans, plus any other school vehicles we own, including maintenance trucks, plow truck and things like that. So the impact of 3 or 4 new vehicles is not significant as we take off older vehicles. Some of our insurance costs are actually higher on older vehicles because of the chance of us having an issue. So it pretty much balances out as we grow the fleet just a little bit. This purchase will grow the fleet by 1 regular ed bus. Just something moving us forward into looking at our number of kids we're transporting, looking at the number of routes, looking at the way we're dividing up schools. We're building in some future potential, future planning into the program. Any questions?
Questions, anyone?
A lot.
Yeah, just a couple.
Remind me, when were the most recent buses delivered? I remember last time, or are we still waiting
Nope,
on?
we literally took delivery in November.
Okay,
That was the ones that were purchased last year in February.
thank you, that was my question, I'm
Yep,
trying
they-
to find it in my.
They take a while to get here, yeah, that's for
Yes.
sure.
Okay, and so these will be delivered in the fall of
Correct.
this year,
Next question.
Yes, that is correct.
2025.
Yes.
Thank you. What is a typical longevity of, like, you guys are on a renewal or a program that you wanna continue to get new buses? What does that look like? Is it every 10 years, 12 years? What does it look like?
Well, we're currently moving a couple of 2008s out of the fleet.
Okay.
So they are, math in my head, 14, 16 years old.
Okay.
10 to 15 years is pretty much a good life expectancy for a school bus. That's about as much as we can expect. I am proud of the fact that we generally run 15 years here. Very few surprises that we've had any go out faster than that. One of the ones on the list is going out faster than that. It was involved in an accident almost 2 years ago now. And it just has issues that are beyond cost effectiveness to repair. So we're moving that one out early. But nonetheless, yeah, we try to aim for that 15-year mark and we do pretty well with it.
Okay. Another question, do we always buy new instead of used? Is that just something we've always done, or?
Occasionally, we have purchased a few off-lease buses, buses that come off of short-term leases from other districts. They do experience more repair issues. They are generally not specified in the way that we would build a bus. They're good and they have been remarkably, an effective solution. Currently, and for the past several years, there are very precious few off-lease buses available. The leasing program availability just vaporized with the economy and COVID and other things. So districts were holding on to them, just buying them off their own leases. So there's very little of that available.
Thank you.
And buying a used bus would mean buying one that somebody else has put out for 12 years, so
Sure.
that's really not worth it.
Yeah.
Scary.
And just as an additional note, school bus fleets get inspected every year, so there's a lot of work that goes into maintaining them. If there's rust and so on, that all has to be addressed, and so the older a bus gets, the more it takes to get that bus up to being able to still be roadworthy. And so that's where I agree that 10 to 15 year window is typical, very typical.
I would only add another piece of the puzzle here. If you are looking at the spec sheets with the price comparisons that are available, we use the MSBO bus purchasing program. Just put in your specs, you put in your needs, and the bus companies go to work and give you a price. We are not necessarily buying the cheapest bus. They're very close in price, and they're very close. I think the lowest cost we're getting is on our special needs bus. Our 77 passengers may cost a little more. However, these buses are of the same make and model of the buses we own. To move to a different manufacturer at this point would be very cost prohibitive. It would have to be a very planned, long changeover moment with a lot of surprise costs as we retool and bring other parts and equipment into the garage to repair them.
When I was looking through the spec sheet, there is it looks like not insurance, but a warranty. Looks like there's an added warranty on the one that you're also proposing, where the other ones did not have the warranty, correct?
No, they do, so sorry, I've only been here 2 years, so
Okay,
I would
that's
say
okay.
in the 2 years, we have added warranty. But I know the previous 4 buses that came in did have that warranty added on to them.
Okay, thank you.
And I also know that we've been updating some of our technology on our buses, and so are these buses being equipped with that on the front end?
Oh, yes. Yes, these are coming, some parts will be added afterwards. We'll do the camera systems, we'll do the GPS and the stuff that we were adding. As a side note, if you have seen one of last year's buses out on the road, you cannot mistake the difference. They glow. The amount of reflective and the word school bus on the front is lit up, and the safety levels that we are adding and growing in our fleet, thanks to Mike Lita, are terrific. In my first 20 years, I honestly did not see much growth in that, and there wasn't very much in the industry, and there has been recently, and Mike Lita is certainly taking advantage of the opportunities there to get us definitely safer fleet.
Jennifer?
I guess just to kind of piggyback off of that, with the new cameras and things that we've added, are we able to remove, those are brand new cameras on the buses we're talking, will we be able to reuse that hardware, moving it over?
Absolutely.
Buying new licenses and,
Yep, nope, we strip them well before they go out.
I see we have roughly, looks like 9 2010s. What are we doing? Are we gonna get hit in 2 years with buying 9 new buses, or what are we doing?
We are
to-
trying to spread that out. Part of that you see in picking up one extra now, and trying to spread that out. We don't like those bubbles. They are a hardship, and they're not a good thing to face. So-
Right, that's the difficulty sometimes. If you do purchase through bond issues, you end up with a big bubble, right? And then that's all well and good at the moment, but over time, that really causes you problems with sequencing and how you're gonna deal with that. So that's where getting a soft landing, so to speak, and getting past that bubble point is gonna be important. So we are, as you can tell, we're nearing that life expectancy on those buses, so that's where this really comes into play.
There's other things, if you pad them with more and maybe you move a few of those into substitute rolls a little sooner so that they last longer, so we can spread out that bubble over time.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to 12B, bond 2023 Paris Ridge Playground. Back to you, Mr. Haas.
All right, one of the 2023 bond categories is dedicated to playground improvements at Paris Ridge Elementary. As you may recall, over the 2020 bond, we've been doing playground enhancements at Edmonds Lake, Kettle Lake, and Cal-El. And we wrap up with Kettle Lake this coming spring, and we would like to introduce the next one in the row at Paris Ridge. The good news, Paris Ridge's equipment, Paris Ridge's playground items are probably, without using a word, they are significantly better from the word go. The purchases that were done when we built that building were at a level that were absolutely a much higher quality of playground equipment. Because of that, we really don't have to replace much of the hardware of the equipment. At this point, our biggest interest is replacing what's called the playground safety surfacing. For years, the standard has been the wood chips. Unfortunately, wood chips are good, they're not the best, and they are also not in any way, shape, or form special ed compliant. We want our playgrounds to become more inclusive. The number one way to make a playground more inclusive is to make the ground something that you can use in all forms of physical handicap. So what we would like to do is, as we move forward, we're transforming and we're gonna start to have more playgrounds with more of a firm surface. The playground safety surfacing that we're looking to replace here is called poured in place. Paris Ridge does have some poured in place. It's a crescent shape around each one, and then it's supplemented with a lot of wood chips. We're looking to tear all that out and suck out all the wood chips, clean it up, and put more poured in place in there. It's a firmer surface, but it is still absolutely compliant for the fall height, for all the dangerous things that we're doing out there on the playground, the fun things we're doing out there on the playground. We're looking to add a few minor events to that playground. Some of the options that they are looking at have been included as a link on that one document. They're looking to add a rope climber, they just don't know which one they want yet. So they're hoping to make that decision this week. Couple of the rope climbers that they're talking about adding will put them over budget, but their PTO is talking about stepping up to help fund the playground renewal. So that's exciting. So I'm hoping they decide to get something cool. I kind of like the Vista Star 3. That's my favorite personally. We have done a few minor things out there. We removed an old spinner that the secretaries actually brought to my attention this year. By the end of September, they had already filled out a substantial part of the spreadsheet they were keeping with injuries from the old spinner. So we got that right out of there and took care of that safety challenge. But they'd like to put in a new, different spinner to help them out, and they'd like to add some things, and we want to obviously add that playground safety surface. So this would come through Sinclair Recreation Game Time equipment. This is what we've been using in all of the new upgrades, and it is an Omnia purchasing cooperative purchase.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to 12C, 2025 Technology Bond Projects, Mr. Buktavi.
Good evening. Been battling a cold for the last week, so I'm hoping the cough doesn't interject itself in here, but we'll see how far I get. The report you have before you includes several different technology projects. They're all bond-funded projects. Some come out of the 2020 bond, so those are the very end of the technology things in that bond issue. The others are getting a start on the 2023 bond issue. We released the RFP in mid-December. On January 17, we held a bid opening here, and we did have great turnout for that. There were several bidders for each category, so we're very pleased with that. There are a number of very good options for us to choose from. We are currently conducting post-bid interviews. We did some last week, and we will finish those up this week. So we don't have numbers to share with you this evening, but we will come back at the next month's committee meeting and the board meeting with those numbers for your hopeful approval. The first project in that packet is the replacement of all of the copy machines in the district. Those devices were all purchased as part of a bond project in 2017. They are, again, nearing their, some are already at the end of their life, as we got a request from the high school this week to please help us do something, so we move things around so we can get printers within acceptable use of teachers and their duties. So they are at the end of their life. Unfortunately, they don't have bus lives. They're 5 to 7 years, and they're sadly have less value than a used school bus does. The new units we'll purchase, we've asked for an extended warranty, which will include all of the toner and pieces and parts to keep them functional. Hopefully for another 6 years is what we're targeting with these. And we have asked vendors to provide a fixed guaranteed cost for the copies for the life of that device. And we're also purchasing with that warranty a number of copies up front. With copiers, you're paying for not only the device itself, but your ongoing costs are the cost per copy, which is the toner and all the parts and labor and stuff to keep them running. So questions on that piece? I don't know if we want to take questions on each section of this bid or wait till the end. I can do either.
Go ahead.
Okay. The next one is the paging system at the high school north campus. The paging system that is in there now is the original analog system that went in with that building. We have been working to upgrade all of the paging systems in all of our buildings. This is the last one that is still operating on a purely analog system. So this will bring the building up to all the common standards that we have throughout the building. The last one we did last summer was Emmons Lake. South Campus at the high school already has a digital system, though it is somewhat different than what the rest of the building is. That one would be addressed at some point during the 2023 bond project. And after that, the classroom instructional technology. This is the first of 3 phases where we will go into each and every classroom in the district and replace the pieces and parts, the instructional pieces that the teachers use on a daily basis. So that includes the projector, the amplifier, which in this new set of equipment will also include voice amplification. They'll wear a pendant microphone around their neck if they choose, which will amplify their voice over the speakers in the classroom that the computer audio and sound from multimedia presentations they use will go over that, so it'll make that easier for them to be heard by all of the students. Phase 1 of this will include Cal-El, the ECC, Emmons Lake, and Paris Ridge. And we'll do a similar number of buildings in the subsequent years 2 and 3 of that. And finally, there's a low voltage structured cabling portion of that bid document that went out. The classroom instructional technology as well as the paging system at the high school requires data cabling to be run to support the devices that we're putting in there. And not all vendors that might provide AV services do structured cabling themselves, so that's why we break it out and do the cabling separately. There are some companies that have submitted bids for both categories. But this does allow us to pick best of breed if there are advantages using separate contractors. So those are the 4 categories that we're looking to do this summer. Questions?
Any questions? We'll be voting on this and the other previous 3, next month, by the way it looks.
Correct. All right, and I would be remiss if I didn't also thank the board for your support of everything that we do here in Caledonia. It is very much appreciated by those of us behind the scenes. So thank you.
Thank you. On to 12D, School of Choice Resolution.
Right, also, for consideration next month will be the Schools of Choice resolution. This is an annual authorization, and the attachment that you see is the same one that we've essentially used over the last several years. There are 2 pieces to Schools of Choice. There's what's called Section 105, that's within the county, so that's within Kent County, the Kent ISD, so including TK. And then there is what's called 105C, and that's for school districts for students who are residents outside of the Kent ISD. So there are 3 things on that particular resolution. If you've taken a look at it, there is a resolution to opt out of 105C, which we can do either opting in or opting out. We have historically in Kent County opted out of Section 105 and used instead the Kent County Plan, which is the second item there. So we would be opting out of 105 and into the Kent County Plan if we choose to continue what we've been doing. And then the final one down at the bottom is the consideration of 105C, the outside of the county. The district has done different things through the years, but for the last few years has opted out of Section 105C. So we can discuss this more at the committee meeting, just to give you a heads up, that's what's coming, and that's what those different things relate to.
Any questions? Okay, moving on to number 13, board comments. We have a question as to whether we're going to maintain the committee as a whole moving forward, so I kind of want to get everyone's feedback to see if we're on that same ground or if we want to choose another direction, so I'll open it up.
I personally appreciate the committee of the whole structure with the board meeting to follow. For me, it's been good this year to kind of have the opportunity to hear from what would have been, at least in my experience, I know not everyone had this experience, but would have been previously presented in maybe one committee but not the other. It's just given an opportunity to kind of hear all the things that are gonna come to presentation to the board in a timely manner, and I feel like by the time I get here, I usually have heard it 2 or 3 times, or I've heard it at the committee, and then we maybe heard it in a presentation here as well as had it in the board notes. So I feel very well prepared by the time I get here. So that's just my personal experience. So I'm in favor of keeping our current structure, or most recent structure, I guess I'll say.
I agree with Brittany on that. I like the committee as a whole.
Yeah, I would agree that I definitely didn't appreciate the separate committees because I think that it made it slower for communication, and then our poor administrative staff sometimes having to repeat presentations over and over. So I really think that the committee of a whole I do appreciate. I don't know if it would be possible to do that instead of like every other week having a meeting, if we had the committee of the whole the week prior, so that they were consecutive weeks. I think that there would be some advantage to that, just being able to have them closer to one another. I don't know if that would be potentially consideration.
I too agree. I think the committee as a whole is a good use of everyone's time. I don't feel like I'm not getting the information or the discussion that I think is important to making decisions on behalf of the community. So I'm good with it. Sounds like now Sean and Jessica, you have not experienced this. You've seen it, I think, as a community member. But I think that's the direction we're gonna wanna go.
I hate to be a naysayer. I appreciate the committee of the whole essentially so that it is not wasting our administration or our cabinet's time so that they're not doing the presentation twice. However, the issue that I've raised multiple times at committee of the whole is if we're not gonna utilize it and actually have the discussions and we kind of blindside our cabinet so that they can't be prepared in the public meetings, then I think it is still wasting everyone's time. And we're just basically having 2 meetings like a week apart where we get to have the agenda read to us. So if we can have discussions in good faith, I support committee of the whole. If not, then I think it takes time out of my life. I know our administrators have to stay later, everyone else has a life too.
Thank you. Are there any other board comments?
So it would be helpful for us if we can land on how we are going to do this. So we heard a suggestion for us from a scheduling standpoint. I think we need to we'd love to hear from you on how you want to schedule us at least the February one, and then we can at the February one talk about the rest if we want to do it that way.
Can I hear from you as a representative of the rest of the cabinet about what you would think of Joan's proposal? I'm not inherently opposed, but I'm just curious how that would be for you guys to structure preparation of the agendas and if that's giving you enough time to.
No, I think it's actually advantageous. The closer that you get to the regular board meeting, the more the agenda will have come together. And so I think there's advantage to that as a whole. And I'll look to other. Would you agree or disagree on that? Daryl, Michelle, what do you think about the week before rather than like 2 weeks before?
I think we've done that in the past, so
Yeah.
it's not.
I think the week before is also more where the rhythm was when we were doing separate committees, that was in that
Yes,
week before
that's
as
true.
well. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
I just have a question being new. Let's say we decided, not even decided, but we discussed some items at that meeting, but then maybe we say, hey, can you get us more information on that? So the only
That's the
concern
purpose,
I have
yes.
is, we have a week though to get the information and divest that, and there's not, all I'm asking is a week gonna be too short of a time span to get the information we need to make the final decision?
Great
So-
question. The way that I think the flow worked, and you guys speak into it as well as I, but what I think is good is as we talk about, like right now tonight, we were talking about February, right? So at February, we're gonna start talking about March. So the first committee, of the whole in February, right before that meeting, will also give you the first preview potentially at what's coming in March. Now, there are always things that add.
Okay.
But so that's part of it, and I know where sometimes we don't go as much in depth in March perhaps for the March stuff in February, because we don't wanna go through this all 4 times with you. But it's just all part of informing the community, having you have an ample time to consider things and all. So that's really the idea behind it, I think.
So that if we go along that lines for February, we'd be looking at the week of the 17th of February.
That's the midwinter.
Which is midwinter break.
Right.
But if we go toward the end of that week, that's not an issue, I don't think, for us administratively.
How about for the board? So you'd say the meeting on the 20th?
Did we do Wednesdays last time?
We did.
Wednesdays, so that would be the 19th, or we could do the 20th.
Either would be okay. From my point of view, what about the other board members? States work okay.
I do think Wednesdays work pretty
Wednesday.
well because it does give us a little more time to turn things around, like Jessica was talking about, from Wednesday to Monday. The later we get in that week before, it does get more problematic. So at least for this, where we're coming back from winter break, to do it at Wednesday, and then maybe there we discuss when we're gonna do it from there on out.
It sounds like we've landed on the 19th.
That works.
And moving on into March, do we wanna keep with that same Wednesday? And as needed, adjust?
I personally think a cadence is nice, it's a little easier to plan on, so.
So then we would always go to the Wednesday prior to the board meeting, even when they are pushed earlier or later in the month, it'll be the Wednesday prior to the board meeting on the schedule we just approved.
That's the way I'm feeling we're going.
Perfect.
Sounds good.
Derek, does that work for staff?
Yeah, I think that's good, and then so what we'll do is we'll put together that list of dates of what that looks like for you, just to confirm we're all on the same page, and that we aren't running into some other thing that we're not foreseeing right now, like spring break or something like that. We have to think through some of that, but we'll bring this to you at the committee meeting. Make sure we're all set.
Thank you. Now, are there other board comments?
I have a comment really quick. First, I just wanted to thank everybody for putting your trust in me to be on the Board of Education. Very excited to be in this capacity and really looking forward to working all of you guys on the board. I've had the opportunity to talk to each one of you guys, and I think we have a really good thing going, and I think we're gonna really try and make our schools better than they've ever been. So just really excited to serve, and just wanted to thank everybody for putting their trust in me. So thank you.
Anyone else? Move on to item 14, which is adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
I
Opposed? We are adjourned.